Hello, welcome to the Jessie at Home Stitchopedia. In this Stitchopedia video, I'm going to show you how to make crochet post-stitch cables. I'm going to show you 2-stitch cables, 4-stitch cables, left-leaning cables, and right-leaning cables. This sample piece can be made with the instructions and the chart in the text attached to this video. And I actually made it using Universal Cotton Supreme yarn and a US H or 8 or 5 millimeter crochet hook. And for this piece, you can see these are 2 cables across 2 stitches. These are cables across 4 stitches and cables across 2 stitches again. And everything below here is a left leaning cable. You can see how it all leans to the left, and everything above here is a right leaning cable. You can see how it all leans to the right. I'm going to show you all of those things, and these are post stitches. So in between the post stitches, I have done on the right side, they are back post. The cables are made with front post stitches, and in between I have back post stitches, and of course when you flip, everything is opposite when you're working in the row coming back. And the reason we do it that way is because it really makes those cables pop out. If I put front post stitches on either side of the cable, which you can do, and it is that way in some of the patterns, the cables aren't quite so prominent. They don't pop out as much. Okay, so it's really depends on the design, but for this sample piece I wanted to do it this way for you so you could really see what your cables look like as you're working them. The point of this video isn't so much to teach you to design cables as it is to show you how to make them if they show up in a pattern of that you are working on. But of course, if you go ahead and design, that works too. But I'm really focusing on making sure you understand how to actually work the cables. So I'm going to show you on this smaller piece how to make each of the individual stitches. And then you can go ahead and you can make the practice piece yourself if you would like, with the instructions that are in the text attached to this video. For this little practice piece, I started off with a chain 12, and then I double crocheted into the 4th chain from the hook in each remaining chain, which gave me 9 double crochets. And then we have our little turning chain, which makes a total of 10 stitches. Now, let me show you. I'm going to start off with the left leaning cable across 2 stitches. This is where we're starting off. We're going to chain 2, and then I'm going to make one of the background stitches. So we're going to back post double crochet into the 2nd stitch, since the chain 2 counted as our first stitch. Now we're going to make that left leaning post stitch cable. It's a mouthful. Left leaning post stitch cable across 2 stitches. So we're going to skip the 1st stitch, and we are going to front post double crochet into the 2nd. We're going to skip 1, front post double crochet into the next, and then we're going to front post double crochet into the stitch that we skipped. And we're just going to do that in front of everything else that we've done. So everything else goes in the back of our hook, and we just go back into the stitch we skipped. Let's do that again. Let's make 2 more background stitches. So 2 back post doubles, just to put a little space in between our chains so you can see them better. And then we're going to make another cable. I keep saying chain instead of cable, I'm sorry. You're going to skip a stitch and front post double crochet into the next stitch, and then front post double crochet into the stitch that you skipped, working in front of everything else. So everything else stays behind the hook, and we just front post double into the stitch that we skipped. Now there's one more background stitch, and then half double crochet into the turning chain, which I'm just kind of going into the loop there. Okay, and it doesn't really look like too much yet. They really look a lot better after you've done the return row. So let's do the return row and then look at it, and then we'll do that again before we go into making them right leaning. So for the return row, we chain 2, and now here's our in-between stitch. We're going to, which is now, since we turned it over, a front post, so we're going to front post into that. Now our cables are now back post since we turned it over. We are going to back post into our cable. So it's all kind of mushed together here because of the crossover. What you want to do is look across the top of your row and just kind of find the next stitch that's coming out of the top of your row. You see how you can do that? There's the next stitch. That's what you're going to back post double around. And then back post double around the next one. Oop, looks like I caught a little something extra. It happens sometimes. And now here's my 2 in between stitches, so I'm front posting on those. Front post double on both of those. And then we get to another cable, so we need 2 back post doubles. But again, they're kind of mushed together. So I'm just going to find my next stitch that's coming from the top. They come from a different place on the top and the bottom, so you want to find the next stitch coming from the top, and that's what you back post double around. And then the next stitch, back post double around that. And I have one more in between, front post double around that, and then a half double crochet at the turning chain and turn. And now that looks a lot more like a chain. Let's do that one more time. Repeat those last 2 rows one more time to get a handle on the left leaning cable across 2, and then we will go back and do the right leanings. So chain 2 and back post, and now for the cable we skip 1 and we front post double crochet on the second stitch. Then we front post double crochet into the stitch that we skipped, working in front of everything else. Then we have 2 behind, so 2 back post doubles. Then the next cable we are going to skip 1 and front post double into the next stitch, and then front post double into the stitch that we skipped, working in front of everything. One more back post double for the kind of background stitch, and a half double. Okay, and then let's do one more return row so that those cables kind of work themselves out a little bit, and then we'll go the other direction. Okay, I did my return row, and now you can see our little cables. We have 1 crossover, 2 crossover on our cables, and they're both left leaning. So now we're going to do the right leaning cables. They start off the same, but when you do the second stitch, they're done a little differently, and you just have to figure out the way that your hands feel the best when you're doing them. The way that my hands feel the best, the way that I feel most comfortable, you can't see it all what I'm doing with the video, so I have to kind of finagle things a little bit to make sure you can see where everything goes. But there's usually a much more comfortable way to do it. It's something you kind of figure out on your own as to what's comfortable for your hands, okay? So we've done our chain 2. We're going to do our back post double for this in-between stitch. And we're going to start our cable the same way, where we skip the first stitch and we front post double into the second. And now we're still going to front post double into the stitch that we skipped, but this time we're going to work behind this stitch. Okay, so you're going to make the front post double, you're just going behind this stitch. So you kind of have to work behind and then pick up the stitch that you skipped, staying behind the stitch that you had just made. Okay? And there is a right leaning for you. Now, 2 backgrounds, and I'll do it again. So 2 back posts. And skip a stitch, front post double into the next, and then front post double into the stitch that you skipped, but working behind the last front post double you just made. There you go. It's really a little bit of finagling to get there. And then let's do one more background, and then you can see it's background and half double at the end. You can see it's going the other way. Okay, let me do the return row, and then we'll do that again. The return row is done exactly the same way as we did before. Front post here, and then 2 backs. And again, you have to kind of, see, I grabbed the wrong one. You have to finagle, there we go, to find the next stitch. Sorry, to find the next stitch from the top. And the next stitch from the top. I'll show you that again when we get to the next one. 2 fronts, then 2 back post doubles onto the crossover, and you can see how they're all kind of smushed together. You just kind of have to finagle to figure out which one is first. This one is first, so that's where I'm putting my hook. And this one is second, so that's where I'm putting that back post double crochet. One more front post, and then the half double. And then let's do that row one more time, then a return row, and then we'll work on the 4s, which are really exciting. Okay, so one more cable row, so work on the back post here, and then we're going to do the right leaning cable. So we skip one, double crochet into the next, front post double crochet into the next, and then we're going to front post double crochet into the skipped stitch, working behind the stitch we just made. Work behind, grab that, and 2 back posts, then another cable across 2 right leanings. So we skip the first, we front post double into the second, and then we front post double into the skip stitch, working behind the stitch we just made. Okay, and back post. And turning your half double. Okay, now I'm going to do the return row, and then we will do the 4 cables. So I've completed my return row, and you can see we have 2 sets of cables that go left leaning, and then 2 sets of cables that go right leaning. Now let's do the left leaning cable across 4 stitches. So we're going to chain 2, and then we are going to do 2 back posts just to get us to the point where we have the 4 stitches in the middle. And now we're going to put our cable across the next 4 stitches. So to do that, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to use front post trebles this time because this stitch travels over a longer distance, and so it needs to be longer. Because of the extreme angle of the stitch, you need to make it longer, or else it'll really shorten your row. So we're using trebles for this, even though it's worked within a double row. And we have these 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to work in stitch 3, 4, and then stitch 1, 2. So to begin, for our left leaning cable over 4 stitches, we are going to skip 2 stitches and treble crochet, front post treble crochet into the 3rd stitch, and then front post treble crochet into the 4th stitch. So we skipped 2 and then front post treble crochet into the next 2. And now we're going to go back and, working in front of everything we've done, because we are working on a left leaning, we are going to front post treble crochet into the first 2 stitches, into the 2 stitches we skipped. So the first one that we skipped, which was stitch number 1, and then the second one that we skipped, which was stitch number 2, front post trebles into both of those. And then let's do 2 more back posts just to get this pushed to the Just get the background here. Oops. Yes, 2 more back posts. Sorry, look at that. I even got confused as to where I was. 1. It's easy to do. 2, and then the half double at the end of the row. And you can see our little crossover here. It's going to be, again, much more clear when we do the return row. So the return row, done the same way. We're going to front post double into these 2 stitches after we did our turning chain, and then we're going to back post double into each of these 4 from our cable. Okay, because we're working from the back, they are back post doubles so that they look like fronts in the front, they're backs in the back. And if you want, yeah, it's confusing. When you turn them on rows, sometimes you get confused. And now, these last 2 are going to be front post doubles. And at the very end, we have a half double. And here, now you can see it even more clearly. The cable. Let me do 1 more of those going to the left. We're going to chain 2 and back post double into each of the next 2. Okay, so you can really get a background going. And now let's make that cable once more. We are going to skip the first 2 stitches and front post treble into the next 2. So we skipped 1, 2, we front post treble into 3 and 4. And then we are going to go back and front post treble into the 2 stitches that we skipped, working in front of everything that we've just done. So front post treble into stitch 1 and stitch 2. And then our 2 backs, 2 back post doubles, and the half double at the end of the row. Okay, there's another crossover, and then we'll do the return row again. Okay, so you can really see now how the cabling across 4 looks. Now we're going to work on the cable across 4 going left leaning. Okay, and you've probably figured out how we make that change. It's the same idea as we did before. Okay, so first we do our chain 2 for our turning chain. We do our 2 back posts. I get myself some more yarn. We do our 2 back posts. 1, 2. And now this starts off the same way as before. We skip the first 2 stitches and we front post treble into stitches 3 and 4. Same as we did before. And this is where it starts to get a little different. Now we're going to front post treble into the 2 stitches we skipped, stitches 1 and 2, only this time you're working behind these 2 front post trebles, the 2 that you just made. You're working behind those. So front post treble behind those into the first stitch that you skipped. Things get a little tight, okay? You just got to get used to it, and then front post treble into the second stitch that you skipped. Okay, and see, it did actually work. Okay, it's a little weird, a little finagling, but you'll get the hang of it. You'll get used to it, to the way that it feels. Now we're going to do the 2 backs, 2 back post doubles, and the half double at the end of the row, and then we turn and we make our return row the same as we did before. We chain 2, front post into these background stitches because we're working in the back, And then we have the 4 back post stitches. And you have to, again, finagle them. Find the stitch, the next stitch attached to the top, which is this one. Back post. Find the next stitch attached to the top. Back post. And the next stitch attached to the top, do a back post, and one more attached to the top, do the back post. And then we have our 2 front posts. And the half double. And my yarn's on the floor, and we'll cross the room. Okay, so you can see that we changed directions, right? You see that really clearly? Let's do that one more time, and then I think you'll really be capable of doing the practice piece if that's what you need, or of using these stitches in your pattern, in whatever pattern that you happen to be working on. Okay, so we're going to chain 2 and do 2 back post doubles. 1, 2, and then we're going to skip 2 front post treble into the next stitch. So that's stitch number 3, and front post treble into the next stitch, which is stitch number 4 of the 4 stitches that we're doing our cable in. Now we're going to front post treble into stitches 1 and 2 of our cable, only this time we're working behind the last 2 stitches that we made. So stitch number 1 of our cable gets a front post treble working behind those previous stitches, and stitch number 2 of our cable gets a front post treble working behind those stitches. Oh, I split it. There we go. And then 2 back posts on these last 2. And a half double crochet. And we're going to turn around and do the return row, and then we're going to look at everything. Okay, we finished that return row, and now you can see that we have 2 sets of the 4 cables leaning to the right this time. So you can certainly see what the difference is, and you can see that if you kept switching from right to left and right to left, you'd make a little wave, which can be fun. Most of the time when people make cables, they either go right or left, and most people tend to do left leaning because they're easier. They're much easier for right-handed people to do a left leaning cable. And so that's usually what you see in your patterns. It's just sometimes if they want to do some sort of thing like this, some sort of little design where you need to switch sides, that's when you'll sometimes see some of the right leanings as well. So there's our little how-to, and then from there, once you should be able to make this little practice square, which you could certainly then when you're all done, you know, edge it with some single crochet or something to make a little Afghan square or something you can hang on the wall and say, look what I learned how to do. Whatever floats your boat, right? So here you go. I hope this has helped you understand how to make left leaning and right leaning cables across 2 stitches and across 4 stitches. Obviously I did all of these based on a double crochet post stitch row. These are post stitch cables, and I did all of them based on them being on a double crochet post stitch row because that's the most common way you find them. The techniques are the same if they're on a triple or double triple, you know, it's the same technique. It's just different size, different length of stitches, okay? And when you're working across 4, you always need to lengthen your stitch because the stitch gets longer. But hopefully now that you've seen this, whatever the cables say in your pattern, this should help you with most cables. All right? If you find a really advanced cable and you really want a tutorial on it, send me a message on my Facebook page or, you know, here on this video, reply and let me know if there's some crazy cable that you want a tutorial for, and I'll see what I can do. Alright, I hope this has helped you out, and thank you for watching.